Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I implore anybody who is using drugs right now, do not do it alone.
Another deadly month, 175 overdose deaths in July. Also,
it seems to be a way to keep you connected without losing your spot in the school.
The Vancouver School Board explores a different back-to-school option to ease parents' fears. And
please don't come to this location. Don't contaminate the trail.
Hiker missing for more than 48 hours. Have you seen Ali Naderi?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening, and thanks for joining us online tonight. It's a disturbing and tragic trend that shows no signs of slowing.
There are more people dying in BC from drug overdoses than homicides, car accidents, suicides, and COVID-19 combined.
As Joel Ballard reports, July was the third straight month with more than 170 overdose deaths.
The toxic, illicit drug supply continues to have a profound and tragic impact on the people of British Columbia.
Another 175 people have died from overdoses in July alone, the vast majority of them connected to fentanyl. And it's a crisis that isn't limited to the downtown east side, but touches every region of the province. In 2020, the majority of illicit drug toxicity deaths took place inside private homes, followed by other residences, which include social and supportive housing, and finally, outside. And more men are dying compared to women. LaPointe says the pandemic has restricted access to critical harm reduction services, and BC's top doctor agrees.
It's also dismaying to know that all of the work that we have done around responding to COVID-19 has been a contributing factor to the numbers of deaths that we're seeing from the toxic drug supply.
A big issue has been reduced hours at supervised injection and overdose prevention sites. And both women agree ongoing stigma is keeping people away from those life-saving services.
I implore anybody who is using drugs right now, do not do it alone.
For others who have lived through the pain, the news was tragic but expected.
My heart is broken, but also I'm incredibly frustrated by the slow pace of change in our federal and provincial governments.
After McBain lost her 25-year-old son Jordan to a drug overdose, she founded the group Mums Stop the Harm. She was part of an advisory board for the province, but earlier this month, they walked away from the meetings over a lack of urgency.
The only thing that actually makes sense around the holdup is the unwillingness of the people at the top and the people who can change policy to do the courageous thing.
So what does McBain think the courageous thing is?
For access to safer supply.
Having access to a safer supply.
Implement a safe supply of drugs.
So with a clear answer from the experts, what's the holdup? In a statement, the Ministry of Health and Addiction says they're working on it. In March, BC made it easier to prescribe hydromorphone. And now, an evaluation is underway to better understand the impacts of prescribing the drug. But McBain knows that for many, it's already too late. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
There is a new COVID-19 outbreak, this time at Langley Memorial Hospital, where a discharged patient tested positive for the virus. Bear Creek Villa, a retirement home in Surrey, is also in the midst of an outbreak. 10 long-term care or assisted living facilities are experiencing outbreaks, as are 2 acute care facilities. Hospitalizations are also up to 22, with 7 patients in intensive care. That total is the highest since early June. BC is announcing 58 new cases today, the second fewest in 2 weeks, but the total caseload is now higher than it was in March, and there are 925 active cases.
And tonight, Briar Stewart shows us how health officials are confronting that surge in cases with some firm and steady pressure.
In Metro Vancouver, masks are now mandatory on transit. While officials say the focus is on education, riders could be fined if they don't comply. It's the same when it comes to limits on crowd sizes in restaurants and banquet halls.
We hope this sends a message.
Over the weekend, more than 400 businesses in Surrey were visited by compliance teams. 4 were given $2,300 fines for continually violating health orders.
They made efforts to work with them to kind of gain their compliance, but yeah, they were given repeat warnings.
Police will also be out at this intersection tonight because the Canucks are playing. About 1,000 people gathered here on Friday to celebrate a win, so officers will be urging people to space out. On the weekend, the tenant who lives in this 300-square-foot apartment in Victoria also got a $2,300 fine when police say he hosted a party with upwards of 40 people.
It's not like I had 250 people not wearing masks. 80% of the people in my house were wearing masks.
But the fine didn't stop him from hosting another party the next night. Health officials have put out warnings about a number of COVID-19 cases connected to bars and clubs, and some think the enforcement should be harsher.
But I do think that closures should be on the table if particular operators, particular owners don't take this seriously.
Health officials say they aren't considering industry-wide closures, in part because they believe there's little undetected transmission, and they're able to trace and connect most cases of COVID-19.
We do know that if we just shut things down, they do tend to go underground where they are less controlled. They can cause more challenges.
Which is why officials say they're staying the course and still prefer a little nudging over enforcement. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
As we inch closer to September, many parents are wondering what back to school will look like during the pandemic, and many are frustrated with what they see as a lack of options.
Now, as Tina Lovegreen reports, the Vancouver School Board is floating a new idea.
We're just over 2 weeks away from back to school, but still many parents are weighing their options. Will they or won't they send their kids back into the classroom?
I'm not comfortable sending her back under the current plan, which would be, regular class sizes.
Krista James's daughter is going into grade 7. Her options at this point are send her back to school full-time, homeschool her, or put her into distance education. The last two options would mean her child would lose her place at her school.
To me, that's kind of like blackmailing parents into putting their kids in a situation that they're not feeling comfortable about. So I think we do need other options.
And just this week, VSB sent out a survey asking parents if they're interested in a fourth option, which allows children to learn remotely but still keep their spot in the system.
There's been a lot of push amongst the parent folks I've been doing is that this should have been thought of more thoroughly earlier. But I'm loath to pick on anybody for that because we're all scrambling.
No one from the Vancouver School Board was available for an interview, but in a statement it said that district staff have been hearing from families and parents who are looking for an additional option, something like this hybrid model. It also says it has written to the ministry requesting funding to make this hybrid model possible for elementary school students.
The majority of districts are not able to offer this at this moment because the province has not given funding to be able to put this type of model into place.
The Surrey District Parent Advisory Council is also calling on the ministry to provide funding for a similar program.
The way it stands, those students who are immunocompromised are basically having to homeschool themselves, and then the teachers who are immunocompromised, they have no choice but to go on an unpaid leave. And we need every trained teacher, in the system as possible.
Vancouver parents have until Thursday to vote in a survey, even though it's still unclear whether that fourth option will even be available. Tina Lovegreen, CBC News, Vancouver.
And CBC News has learned the federal government plans to give the provinces and territories $2 billion to help with a safe return to schools. The money will be distributed on a per capita basis. Details on the funding are expected tomorrow morning, but sources say there will be broad discretion on how to use that money.
A hiker reported missing on a mountain north of Coquitlam is set to spend his third night alone in the wilderness. But RCMP and search and rescue volunteers say they are making good progress thanks to tips from the public.
Our Rafferty Baker is live at Eagle Mountain tonight. So Rafferty, how's that search effort going?
Well, Mike, it's been a very busy afternoon here at Eagle Mountain Park. Coquitlam Search and Rescue called for mutual support from the surrounding area, and well over 40 volunteers are taking part. A helicopter is shuttling crews into different spots in the wilderness. And I'm told those numbers are necessary because of the vast network of trails that has to be covered here. A second helicopter, an RCMP helicopter, has been sweeping the area as well, watching from the sky. Now, it's been 48 hours since Ali Naderi went missing. Police say there's no foul play suspected, and they've received heaps of tips from the public. But nobody they've spoken to knows exactly where Naderi planned to hike on Sunday. However, they now have footage from a trail camera that has helped to narrow the search.
We do know, obviously, based on the footage, that he was in a certain point at a certain time. That's helped guide our rescue volunteers, and because they can be so focused now, they can really put the full strength of their organization into finding him.
The footage shows Naderi in shorts and a light jacket. He does not appear to be wearing or carrying a backpack with the types of supplies you would want to weather 2 nights in the wilderness, or 3 if they don't find him this evening. Naderi is described as a 52-year-old Persian man with black salt and pepper hair that curls over his ears and brown eyes. He's 178 centimeters tall and weighs 80 kilograms. He's wearing dark shorts, a dark lightweight hiking jacket, and carrying hiking poles. Now, searchers and police are asking the public to stay away from the trails in this area. Fewer people on the trails will make their job a lot easier tracking Naderi's path. Mike, Lien?
All right, thanks, Rafferty. Let's hope we find him soon. That's Rafferty Baker reporting live for us from Eagle Mountain in Coquitlam tonight. A Vancouver Island man is lucky to be alive after a potentially deadly close call with a flying tire on the highway. Sean Gardner was driving the Trans-Canada near Crofton this past Sunday. That's when a tire came loose from a trailer being towed by a vehicle heading in the opposite direction. It was slammed into the front of Gardner's truck. He's just glad it was a vehicle of his size that took the hit.
Forward to see what I thought was a garbage bag at first, realized it was a tire, had nowhere to go, being a truck right beside me and a car right behind me. And I can only imagine, you know, it could have been so much worse for someone else.
Now, even though the damage was dramatic, Gardner was able to pull over, and thankfully no one was hurt in the incident. According to him, the driver responsible for the tire has been identified. There's no word if there will be fines or penalties.
The new leader of the Conservative Party of Canada held his first news conference since getting the job earlier this week.
Aaron O'Toole outlined some of his priorities today.
As Hannah Thibodeau reports, O'Toole is trying to position himself as a champion for average Canadians.
Day two.
Coffee in hand and a quick stride. Aaron O'Toole started his day bright and early. And today, it was about projecting the leader he strives to be.
I'm not famous, I'm not well known. I get things done. I don't drop the ball, and I've always fought for Canadians.
A not so subtle diss to the Trudeau name. So clearly, he doesn't want to be like Trudeau. But what about former Conservative leader Andrew Scheer?
I have a lot of respect for Andrew, and I thanked him for his service. He's an important member of the team.
But O'Toole is no Scheer, who was dogged about his social conservative positions on abortion and same-sex marriage in the last election, issues that became fatal to his leadership. O'Toole says he has a clear track record on human rights.
I won the leadership of the Conservative Party as a pro-choice Conservative MP, one that won with a strong mandate. That's how I'm going to lead as the leader of the opposition.
O'Toole also wants to make sure he's a uniter, and he plans to reach out to leadership opponents, Leslyn Lewis and Peter MacKay. And he wants to collaborate with the provinces, and has already spoken with the premiers of Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. But he also says he could work with the Liberal government, and is not yet ready to say if he'll try to trigger an election this fall.
I will always put the interests of Canadians first, and will collaborate when I can. So if Mr. Trudeau thinks he can play some games with a new leader and force an election, we will be ready.
It was very clear that he wanted to cut the rug from under his opponents and start defining who he is and what his party will stand for before his opponents do it for him.
And over the next weeks and months, O'Toole will continue to define what type of leader he is as he develops his policies on pandemic recovery, the economy, and climate change, and also who he appoints as his shadow critics. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
In U.S. politics, day 2 of the Republican National Convention will feature more members of Donald Trump's family.
First Lady Melania Trump will speak tonight, as will his children Eric and Tiffany. As CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick reports, it follows a day of fiery attack speeches against the Democrats.
President Donald Trump said his party's convention would offer an uplifting vision to Americans, but on night 1, those watching heard a whole lot of fear and loathing. A range of speakers warned voters of dire and dangerous consequences if Joe Biden and the, quote, radical left are elected. They claimed that Democrats want to take away people's guns, their freedom of speech, and their police.
I am here tonight to tell you, to warn you, that this election is a decision between preserving America as we know it and eliminating everything that we love.
It's almost like this election is shaping up to be church, work, and school versus rioting, looting, and vandalism.
They want to enslave you to the weak, dependent, liberal, victim ideology to the point that you will not recognize this country or yourself.
Speakers praised Trump's leadership on the economy and on the COVID-19 pandemic. They also defended him against accusations that he's racist.
Growing up in the Deep South, I've seen racism up close. I know what it is, and it isn't Donald Trump.
Other testimonials sought to portray Trump as a compassionate man who cares about everyday Americans. To illustrate that theme, Trump made brief appearances from the White House, talking to former hostages and to frontline workers. Tonight, the spotlight will fall to his wife, First Lady Melania Trump. She'll deliver her speech live from the Rose Garden at the White House. Her remarks will be closely watched. When she spoke at the 2016 convention, she was accused of plagiarizing her predecessor, Michelle Obama. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will also speak tonight from Jerusalem, and that's sparking controversy. He's on a taxpayer-funded trip to the Middle East, and he's breaking protocol by delivering a partisan speech. His address is expected to focus on Trump's America First foreign policy. Trump is also expected to make multiple appearances during tonight's primetime events, all a warm-up to his big acceptance speech Thursday night. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to a CBC News exclusive about extremist elements in a part of Canada's military. Our investigation followed last month's attack on Rideau Hall. The suspect, a reservist member of a unit called the Canadian Rangers.
Nearly 4 years ago, the military identified supporters of far-right movements in the Rangers and allowed them to keep serving.
Murray Brewster has more on what we found and the investigation that it's prompted.
This message is brought to you by the 3%ers of Tennessee.
It started in the States and migrated north. 3%ers are survivalists and gun rights advocates. The Soldiers of Odin are a separate, anti-immigration, white supremacist group started in Finland with chapters in Canada that have tried to present a softer face. And supporters of both groups have been discovered in a Canadian Ranger unit. CBC News began investigating the 4th Ranger Group after a member from Manitoba was arrested in connection with the storming of Rideau Hall last month and threats made against the Prime Minister. The investigation led us to Eric Miglund and his former wife Jody, also a Ranger. Both supported the 3% movement. 4 years ago, military counterintelligence became aware of Eric Miglund's online posts and interviewed him as a possible threat. His social media feed is full of anti-government rhetoric. One post calls the Prime Minister a treasonous bastard, and yet, as of last week, although not on active duty, he was still in the Rangers, to the shock and dismay of the Defense Minister.
My viewpoints have been very clear at this. Any type of behavior like this is unacceptable.
CBC News contacted Eric Miglund, who initially agreed to comment. He has since gone silent. His ex-wife, in an email, says the couple are no longer 3%ers. Jody Miglund said new members of the group have racist and anti-government leanings, and they wanted no part of it. Yet, Eric Miglund, as late as June this year, was still tweeting support for 3%ers. One expert believes the military tried to rehabilitate him, but failed.
The fact that he was not also discharged or asked to leave outright is really surprising.
The military has launched an investigation into what CBC News has uncovered. Aside from being unable to explain why Eric Miglin was allowed to stay, it is also unclear why the leadership of the Ranger unit didn't take action when his activities became apparent. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
Tropical storm Laura is now a hurricane, gaining strength as it spins toward the Gulf Coast off Texas and Louisiana.
This afternoon, the governor of Texas warned residents to prepare for high storm surges and winds of more than 200 kilometers per hour.
We have only a few more hours for people to make sure they take the action that is needed to ensure their safety and the safety of their property.
In the eerie calm before landfall, residents who have not been ordered to evacuate their homes are bracing for damage.
Louisiana's governor says Laura could end up rivaling the ferocity of the most intense Atlantic hurricane ever that struck in 2005, claiming 120 lives. Tropical storm Marco preceded Laura yesterday, weakening before landfall in Louisiana. And meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. You're, of course, tracking that hurricane. What's the latest?
This is a very serious situation unfolding in the Gulf. I want to take you back to pictures of residents along that North Gulf Coast preparing for what will be a major impact. In fact, officials asking everyone from basically Houston to western Louisiana to prepare for a major hurricane landfall. This storm is rapidly intensifying as we speak, basically moving through water at the sea surface that's equivalent to bathwater temperatures. So thunderstorms just exploding in the center right now, and this is why officials and residents are taking this so seriously. You mentioned Marco. That has sort of resaturated the ground. It wasn't a huge impact maker, but as the storm heads northward, it certainly will be piling on those impacts. I know the satellite here looks like it fades out, but that's just because we're losing daytime lighting. But this storm is going through a process called rapid intensification. So Category 3 likely when it makes landfall Thursday morning, and I'll keep you posted. Major inland storm surge is certainly likely. I do want to talk about some good news in the U.S. happening today and take you to California. Latest pictures coming out of that lightning complex fire, where fire officials have got a bit of a handle on the situation today. Most of the fires they're fighting about 25% contained. The lightning complex fire has grown to about 63,000 acres, so it continues to explode. That one is 5% contained. But cooler overnight lows, something we've been seeing here in British Columbia, has helped firefighters with the wildfires, and we're hoping for continued weather like this and little lightning strikes, which was the big cause of all of those fires. So some good news, bad news tonight on the U.S. weather front.
Yeah, for sure. Lots going on down there on both sides of the country for certain. Okay, so what should we be watching for in our neck of the woods?
Well, we've got a nice little breeze going on here, and those morning temperatures really were refreshing. It's hard to please everyone in a forecast, I've got to say, but this kind of weather gets most people, I think. Cooler overnights, nice little breeze, but warm and sunny afternoons. Let me show you the satellite and radar across British Columbia. We do have a different story in the northwest of the province, where showers and cloud continue to move in, but for most of BC, this is a sunny and seasonal week ahead. So taking you through that system's forecast, just a few showers popping up in Prince George tonight and tomorrow morning, but look at that, most of southern BC clear. And we get to keep those cooler overnights, so we won't see explosive fire behavior, except for the exception is the southeast. The Kootenays are still dealing with some very warm temperatures. But look at this, temperatures in the north at or below seasonal. Overnight lows over the next couple of days in the north will be in the single digits. And similar story in through the south as well. Our overnight lows below seasonal getting down around 11, 12s for the Okanagan. Still hitting the 30 mark in the inner Soyuz for tomorrow. And Thursday is very similar temperatures for the week ahead. In fact, very similar weather conditions for most of the province for the next few days. Breaking it down here in Vancouver, slight chance of morning fog or lower cloud, but I think that'll burn off quite quickly, getting back up to 21s. Slight bump in temperature Thursday, Friday, but again, decent overnight lows, lots of sunshine. Still watching for a possibility of a bit of a wind event on Saturday. Timing, there's some uncertainty around that, and it doesn't come with a lot of precipitation at this point. So I'll keep you posted on the all-important weekend forecast. I know we've only got a few left of summer. I can't believe I said that, but it's true.
You said it. Looking good. All right. Thanks, Joe. Well, the Royal Canadian Navy is switching to a new combat uniform, and the entire crew of HMCS Harry DeWolf is testing them.
And as the CBC's Jack Julian reports, the consensus seems to be they're a major improvement.
HMCS Harry DeWolf is a brand new ship, so it's fitting its 75 sailors would be in brand new uniforms.
Until you get something new, you don't identify deficiencies in what you previously had, but now that I have the new Naval Enhanced Combat uniform, I clearly see the defects we have with our previous uniform. So it's time for an update.
Right side.
The last uniforms went largely unchanged for decades, and they were looking a little tired, but the new version is drawing positive reviews.
This one does get a little bit warm, but honestly, it's it looks a bit snazzier, so we get to kind of look cool walking around the dockyard.
It's flashy, right? So it's eye-catching. I love it. So.
But looks are only one criteria. The garments also need to resist flames if a fire were to break out on board.
But to help you escape with less melting of your material on your clothes, that has a resistive property in this uniform that helps you get out of the space.
The uniform is modeled on modern uniforms of several NATO allies. It's a two-piece outfit made to be worn untucked.
If you're doing any physical work or any labor like that, you're just going to keep getting untucked. You're going to have to retuck it in a lot. So it's a lot easier like this.
The plethora of pockets is popular too.
Got stuff in here. I got stuff in here. The pants pockets are actually in convenient locations. So all in all, it's a much better, sleeker, nicer uniform, and it's a much better fit than the old one. The old one kind of, I don't know, it did its job, but it didn't look as good.
A huge morale piece. We have new people coming into Harry DeWolf who don't have this uniform yet. The first question they ask me is, Coxswain, how do I get the new uniform? Because they want to look like everybody else, and so does everybody else in the fleet. And that will come eventually. We're just not there yet.
The new uniform design should be finalized by the end of this year with an initial rollout early in 2021. However, it'll take up to 4 years for everybody in the Royal Canadian Navy to receive the new uniform. Jack Julian, CBC News, Halifax.
Well, the folks on DeWolf seem to like them. They look pretty sharp.
They do.
There you go.
Yeah. So a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem or all of the apps and social media channels that you're probably watching us on tonight.
There you go. And we are online because of hockey, of course. Tomorrow night, similar situation, but we expect to be having a television newscast at about 7:30 tomorrow night.
So I hope you tune in, or you can always catch our local news on our website, of course, cbc.ca/BC. The next local news on television tonight, 11 o'clock, after the National with Dan Burrett.
Have a great night.
Good night.